How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and today's video is going to be focusing on how I managed to get the Never Satisfied achievement for the Gorge event in Don't Starve Together. The method that I used here is based off of a guide posted by Fluffy Animal in the Don't Starve Together forums called Escape Without Satisfying Any Cravings Achievement Guide, and I'll be linking to that in the description below this video. So let's just get started into the match here, and while it's going on, I'll try to explain a few things that I thought were important or that really stuck out to me while playing it. So the first two times that I tried this, we resulted in failing. I've played it with the team that, the other players on the team were adequate players. I'm not going to say they're the best. They're not known for their skill, let's say, but, they did a good job. Much better than a lot of the other players that I play with, and that sort of ties into another point, being that if you can find a group of one or two other players who will play with you regularly to try to get this achievement, it's much easier than having to, pair up in multiple quick matches with people and then try to explain this all to them. So how I introduced them to the strategy that we were planning on using here was I went ahead and linked them to the guide that I was using to complete this. It's the one that I linked in the description below this video. So that way we were all on the same page, but we did not communicate over voice chat or anything like that. So if that's not a possibility for you, just know that it should not be a requirement whatsoever to be able to coordinate your actions here. Now let's focus a little bit more on what's currently going on. So the first few meals that we'll be preparing here use the stone soup recipe, but the very first one is needing fish. So we can do a fish and 2 ferns, foliage, whatever you want to call that stuff. And the reason behind that is because we can't satisfy any of the Gnaw's cravings, and stone soup satisfies the craving for a snack. So this is something that while you're playing, you're going to have to always be keeping an eye on, and that is what is the name for that? What the craving currently is for the Gnaw. If the craving is a soup and you're making a soup, you're going to have to make something else, like roasted veggies. I think on the very first game, this was one of the ways that I screwed up. And on later games, the second game, the reason that one was lost was because the person who was serving the meat Wellington served it during a dessert round. And you can't serve the meat Wellington during a dessert round or during a meat round. If you serve it during the dessert round for less obvious reasons, if you serve the meal during the dessert round, you get less than you would for a normal incorrect recipe. So meat Wellington is the recipe here that we use to get the favors. And the problem is that unlike most other incorrect recipes, if you serve an incorrect meal during a dessert round, you're penalized even more harshly for it. So that's the reason why you can't serve meat Wellington during the dessert round or during the meat round, but the meat round is different because if you serve it during the meat round, it actually satisfies a craving, and even though you're going to get the favor for that, it will result in you failing to get this achievement because you're not allowed to satisfy any cravings. So I hope that made sense. So the general gist of this, like if you wanted to see it like an overall comprehensive view, it largely came down to for me, to producing lots and lots of vegetables, making lots of vegetable soups, to skip recipes up until the point where we could actually get the first red mark. And once we got that first red mark, which was dependent quite a bit on the salt. So you want to get the salt up and going as quickly as possible. Once the salt is up, then hopefully you'll get the large cook pot. Otherwise, you just have to keep skipping through recipes one after the other. And because that will decrease the rate at which the timer decreases. Even if you offer the incorrect recipe, the timer still goes down slower. So it's better to sacrifice an incorrect recipe than no recipe at all. Then when we have meals that require when we get meals that require, for example, a soup, you want to make something like roasted veggies in the oven. This was a problem that I had later after completing this, when I tried to complete it again with some other players, was that the person who was doing the gardening did not leave enough coins for me to buy an oven to cook those roasted veggies. So that was a bit of a problem, and it's something I'm going to keep in mind. I know different people do it differently because I think right now we have soup. Is this soup? I can't tell. Yeah, it's soup. So I had to buy the oven here, and then this is where we make roasted veggies. And the reason you want to stick with recipes like this is because it keeps the gardens simple, I guess you could say. There are some alternative strategies that I've seen. Some of them involve using fewer recipes, but recipes that will get you the sapphire medallion instead, which allow you to get into the sap area, whatever that area is that you want to call with the key. And this isn't a bad strategy at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's really the only way to do it if you're going to play with less than 3 people, but it is not personally how I managed to get that achievement. So, your mileage may vary. Do whatever works for you, I guess, at the end of the day. It's probably your best option. And, this method took perhaps a little bit longer, and it requires an additional person, which can add to the complexity of being able to set it up. But as you can see, I made potato chips there, and that was not ideal because if there's a situation where they don't require a soup, but they do require a dish that has a snack. Sometimes you get a snack there instead, and potato chips do satisfy a snack. So, like in hindsight, looking back at this, you'd probably want to make roasted veggies instead. That's what the guide says, and the only reason I didn't make roasted veggies is because I think I just had potatoes available here. So the potatoes, doing all potatoes is not necessarily a good thing. And you can also see I'm wasting a little bit of time here because I needed to grow some potatoes and I needed to pick them as well. Those are things that could be optimized in the future. It's better if the gardener is always growing the potatoes for you and making sure there's a stockpile of them in the safe. That's where I store them anyway. I suppose you could store them in your inventory as well. For future runs though, I've always tried to include carrots along with the potatoes that I plant because it allows you to make recipes like roasted veggies. And like I said before, if you get a snack instead of a soup for that previous recipe right there, you can't be serving potato chips. You're going to have to serve something like roasted veggies, so you don't want to limit yourself by planting only potatoes. That was a mistake in this one, and it was just through pure luck that I wasn't affected by it to any significant degree. So at this point, I think, we have at least one of these safes open. We didn't get we did get the large cookpot. Okay, that makes things significantly easier. I just realized that was a bit of lucky RNG there. But I've definitely seen it possible to complete this even if you don't get the large cookpot right away. It's not dependent on that, really. Like, if you get it last, that is pretty bad. But I still think it's possible to do it if your coordination is tight enough. But yeah, that was really lucky that we got the cookpot right away. But this was the first time that I successfully completed this accomplishment. Like, I was always the lead cook, and I'm not the best at that. I've come to realize there are other people who are quite a bit better than me. I don't optimize my time as well as I should. I probably don't delegate to other people. I delegate tasks to other people, and I waste my time doing them as well. Like right here, having to fertilize a potato and pick it is something that I should not have needed to do. So the recipe that we're going to make here is 2 small meat and 2 potatoes in a cook pot. And sacrificing this will give you the red favor, providing you don't sacrifice it during the dessert or during a meat round. So a snack should work here. It's a little bit strange, and this is... So I've always found it best if I'm the one, the cook, the main cook is the one who sacrifices, especially the meat Wellingtons, because in games after this, I played with some other people from my Discord, and a continued problem was that they were sacrificing things, the meat Wellington specifically, during rounds where they would only get silver medallions for it. It happened twice in a row. And as much as I would like to think that it was simply RNG, I think it was simply whoever was sacrificing it was not paying attention to the current craving, and twice in a row they sacrificed it on the wrong ones. And the thing is, this also happened when the game before this one here, where the people that I was playing with, the one who cooked up the meat Wellington recipe for the favors, they sacrificed it during a dessert round, which once again is not optimal. We're not going to get favors from that. So if you're somebody who's who's like the main cook, you might want to take over delegation of that to make sure that you're the one who sacrifices everything, because it's a little bit more difficult when somebody else is doing it to know where the mistake was made. If it was a mistake with the game, or just a bit of RNG in the game that is prohibiting you from getting that, or if it was because somebody else made a mistake and they sacrificed it on the wrong round and they didn't realize it, or they don't want to admit to it. So that's just a thought there that I think, sort of a conclusion that I've come to, that in the future, if I am the head cook, I do want to sacrifice everything for the never satisfied accomplishment, if we're trying to do a run for never satisfied, because there are a lot of people out there who still do not have never satisfied. And one of the general takeaways that I hope a lot of my runs that I put up here will impress on you is that you don't have to be an expert to make this work, right? I'm not that, like, I would say I'm above average at the game, but I'm not that great. There are people who are definitely better than me, but you know, we still got it. You know, it does not require an unobtainable skill level to be able to pull this off. And I hope, like, being able to see some of the mistakes that I make and whatnot, it presents a more balanced side of it, where you don't have the expectation that you have to be perfect in order to win it. Because I did make some mistakes here, and in the past ones that I failed, I made even more mistakes. Like sacrificing dishes that satisfied the Gnaw's craving. And I'm still doing it in a way, right? Right here you see I'm using potatoes all the time, even in the oven, when what would happen if I got a snack, for example. Putting potatoes in the oven just gives you potato chips. It's still going to be wrong because it'll satisfy the Gnaw's craving. And I suppose that's one of the more difficult things to wrap your mind around for this accomplishment in particular, is because it's very counterintuitive, right? All this time you've been playing the Gorge, and up until this point, you've always needed to find the recipe the Gnaw actually craves. And now all of a sudden, you got to do the exact opposite, and it's a mind bender. So here's the first meat Wellington. As you can see, it was sacrificed during the bread round. We can tell it's the bread round because the mod that I have installed, I think it's called the Gorge extender. I use that one regularly. That's my favorite Gorge mod at this point. It's like, if you need to use one mod for the Gorge, I think the Gorge extender covers all the bases quite nicely. This time we are sacrificing the potato chips because it's a soup round, and if we sacrificed our potato soup, we would once again satisfy Gnaw's craving. So, you know, as the head chef, that is something you have to be paying constant attention to, and it is once again the main reason why I think you should not let any other team members sacrifice stuff. I think you should reserve delegation of the sacrificing fully to yourself to make sure that no mistakes are made there, because like in general you've already been mentally assigned that task, and others might not consider it because they don't reserve that spot in their mind for consideration. There's no due consideration for it. So at this point, you know, most of this stuff has already been planted, and I focused as the head cook on just producing as much soup as possible to keep that timer from running down too much. Whereas the other two people on my team were focusing on making meat Wellington. As you can see right there's another meat Wellington. I think we got at least 2 of the safes open, so we had enough plates to serve 3 meat Wellingtons. That's something to keep in mind, right? If you open a chest and you only get 1 plate for the first 2, you're not going to have enough plates. You're going to have to open the 3rd chest, or safe. I guess it's called a safe, with the key from the salt. But in our case, I think we got 3 plates within 2 chests, so we were really lucky on this run. But I've seen people do it even if they get the large cook pot on the very last safe. You can still do it, even though it's a lot. Like, that's just about as unlucky as you can get. But you need that large cook pot to get your first red mark, and then you need the casserole dish to cook up the meat Wellington, and you use that red mark to get the large meats, right? Some people might have difficulty with the beefalo running away, but that was personally not too much of an issue because they'll usually chill out after maybe a minute or so. This might actually be the last meat Wellington. Yeah, it is. So the important thing is here, we could not serve it on this round because it says meat right now. So we most certainly have to skip past it. And it's easy to overlook something that small when you're really excited and you're just about to win, and then you realize you've sacrificed it on a meat. And oh, guess what came next? The next meal was dessert. We can't sacrifice it once again. So I had to skip 2 recipes here before I was able to sacrifice the meat Wellington. And if you're wondering why there's a black box, I don't know. it has something to do with assets failing to load in my game. It happens far too frequently, but it is not me hacking or anything like that. Whenever I see black boxes like this in games, screenshots and whatnot that people take, I always end up assuming that they're hacking it, but I don't know why this happened to me. But I'm not able to host my own Gorge games. I can connect any Gorge game. I can create my own games, connect to them, no problem. But yeah, this is just a problem, an ongoing problem that I've had throughout the Gorge. But there, as you can see, me and the team managed to get it done. This was our third try, but like I said before, we were communicating exclusively via text, so I think it is something that pretty much anybody can do if you just set aside like an hour and a half and actually read the guide that I talked about earlier and do your best to follow it. It's not too rigid, and you get that 30,000, I think it's 30,000 extra experience, which will most certainly be helpful in leveling you up. Level 81 it didn't give me a whole lot because I already had a lot of levels, but got me up a couple levels, I think. Took us 15 minutes, 1 second, and we failed 21 dishes. It's possible to do it in fewer dishes, as I'm well aware, but that's how I did it. And that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching, as always, and I hope to see you next time.